Hi, everybody. Welcome to John's Briefs. Once again with Defense Attorney Extraordinaire Tim Forshee here at C2 Tactical in Scottsdale. Grateful that they let us use their conference room. We had a badge cam on the channel not too long ago that was, I mean, it was a goat rodeo. It was a really nightmare, right? Dude runs from the cops, ends up jumping, you know, he's on the roadside, jumps the road, runs through a field, jumps the fence again. As he gets to the roadside, cop tases him, lands him in the middle of a lane of traffic, and a big truck just literally runs him over to his death and smashes him to death. And one of the questions there was the culpability of the officer criminally, but also the culpability of the officer civilly. So we're going to talk again about what the heck qualified immunity is and what it ain't.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Now, I think the big thing that I see a lot of times here, Tim, is in the comments section. I'm talking in the YouTube comments, which, again, if you want to lose IQ points, read comments on the main Ask YouTube channel. My people, we need to work. My God, may the Lord help us all. I literally almost never read them anymore because the personal attacks get to be too much. And we have incredible staff who reads them more than I do, and they'll send me ones that I need to answer. But and people going, well, wait a minute, they should criminally charge him. But in the investigation, in the internal affairs investigation, they said, well, wait a minute, Taser doesn't have anything in their training books about not tasing somebody on a road. And the department doesn't have anything about not tasing somebody in a road. So we can't very well hold him accountable to not do something he wasn't trained not to do. What do you think of that argument?
I agree with it.
I do too.
This is a horrible tragedy. And this cop, I'm sure, second only to the widow.
Oh my God, can you imagine sleeping with that every day?
This cop will have to live with this for the rest of his life. And cops are good people. This isn't on purpose. You know, this is a burden for this guy. This cop feels terrible about this, right?
And of course, the guy who died, he's doing all kinds of things wrong. He's driving when he shouldn't have been driving on a suspended license. Cop says, hey man, we're gonna have to do something about that. He decides to run off. All this is preventable with him not doing what he did.
Correct. You got to put it back there that he's the one that set this machine into motion. That's correct. That's fair.
He started the ball rolling. Still doesn't mean he should have died.
And I guess I look at this video, and I've never been an actual police officer. I've been an auxiliary police officer for off and on for probably 15 years now. I've participated in things like this. I've never been the instrument in the primary person doing it. I'm a big believer as I get older in life that you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. And to me, there were misdemeanor traffic warrants on this guy, right? It looks from the video as though there's a passenger in the vehicle as well. Okay, so you're going to be able to figure out who this guy was, even though he gave you a false ID.
They knew who he was.
You're going to be able to track this guy down. Let him run. Let him run. Maybe it's God's gift to me that I have a bad knee. I don't know that I'm going to chase this guy.
And
he's not. We've already patted down. He's not armed. He doesn't pose an imminent threat to anybody. Let him run. They're going to arrest him at a Circle K an hour from now. And now he's got additional charges of fleeing police. Now I can probably get him on some felonies if I want to. I don't know why you necessarily take off and chase the guy. I just think that it was a diminishing return situation. Now, again, I wasn't there. I don't mean to second guess an honorable police officer, but if it's me, I'm going to go, you know what? I'm not chasing this guy.
I think that does fly in the face of what we train police officers to do, though.
It probably does. That's their job.
You know, their job is to take people into custody who need taken into custody.
That's correct.
Well, he's over there. I have to go run over there to take him into custody. Oh, he keeps running. Now I got to keep running after him.
Yeah. And like Mike said, there were some things that could have been done that would have made it much harder for him to run, but that's hindsight.
Yeah. But I think the big thing when he gets over the road, okay, taser's a better choice than gun. Absolutely. Because we know he's not armed. We know he's not an imminent threat of death. And we said, and I stand by this. Hey, officers, you now know if you've seen that video, you know don't tase somebody on a road,
right? Especially
on a freeway, because you represent a very real risk of death or great bodily harm.
Yep.
Because he can't protect himself, right? and so don't do that. Okay, but we didn't have that problem before, you know, and so I don't think he should be charged. Now then, I do think probably that guy's family is going to get a significant payout from
I would be surprised. I would be surprised. But I do think that likely qualified immunity would be a cloak here for this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that said, I think the police department would probably rather not have the bad PR. They'd probably rather not have the pickets, the protesters. If they can settle this thing for, $1 million or something, I would be surprised if they wouldn't do that. If somebody's looking at this as their $250 million payday, I think qualified immunity would be argued very much down to the line, and I would suspect probably the state would win that one.
Well, and so, okay, let's talk about what it is and what it's not. Because what I hear from YouTube commenters is, well, these cops never get charged because of qualified immunity. So they have qualified immunity, so they're never going to,
Well, again, when we talk about charge, qualified immunity does not protect you from criminal prosecution.
Qualified immunity has nothing to do with criminal law.
If you committed a crime, you're going to get prosecuted. We've seen this, in the Chauvin case, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. There's no qualified immunity for a crime. If there's no qualified immunity for torts, who amongst us would let our children become police officers?
Okay, time out. We're going to explain terms again because we got to put the cookies on the bottom shelf here. So in the criminal world, there's no such thing as qualified immunity. If a police officer does something illegal, they can be charged for that, and they don't have any protection of law.
They're held to the same standard we are.
Or any protection of the state. Now, in terms of was their actions reasonable, well, what did we train them to do? Right. That's where that will come. Well, nobody ever trained him not to do that, and we never really have considered that factor, so it's not against the law to tase somebody on the street. It is against the law to knowingly create a significant risk of death or great bodily harm to someone else. Would a reasonable person see that in this case? Gosh, with everything doing that thing, probably not, so a prosecutor's not going to bring charges here. But qualified immunity says on the civil side, if a public servant, in this case particularly a police officer, is acting within the scope of their public service, their commission as a police officer, then they are not personally, legally, civilly accountable for those actions. In other words, you can't sue them. You can sue the agency that trained them and employs them, but not them.
Well, you can sue anybody you want if you have $240 and a red crayon.
Right, but they're not going to be held liable.
That'll be a case that'll be dismissed immediately. That's correct, yeah. And people say that that's abuse, that the state can get away with anything and they can rip us off and violate our civil rights. And I'm sure there's truth to that. I'm sure that happens. But again, if police officers were held financially, personally liable for anything they did wrong on the job, when all they do all day long, every single day of their job is to deal with people that are bad people, who would take that job? Right. Nobody would take that job. We would have no police officers to police our fine country. And that's a dilemma that we have to get around. And the way we do that is with qualified immunity. Qualified immunity should be decided by a judge, and it should be decided judiciously, right? It should be reasonable. But if it is in fact reasonable and somebody's not using that as a cloak to shield illegal behavior and discriminatory behavior, then I think that it's a good thing. You can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, is it abuse sometimes? Sure.
The immunity is qualified.
And that's a big word.
It's not unqualified, right? We talk about, judges when their actions in their official capacity have immunity from prosecution, and it's really kind of not qualified immunity when they're acting in their judicial capacity. It's immunity.
It's immunity. Yeah, the 11th Amendment kicks in there pretty hard.
The 11th Amendment, it says what it says. We're not going to get away from that. But a police officer's immunity is qualified. In other words, it doesn't extend beyond where they were trained and what their commission says they can and can't do. So operating within the law and within their training, they are protected against personal liability for that. That makes sense to me.
It does. We have to have that. Nobody would ever take that job otherwise.
Right. Well, and so as a police officer, you go, well, wait a minute, that just lets them do whatever they want because they know they have qualified immunity. If that says to them, hey, as long as I'm acting within the standards of what my legal obligations are that I've been trained to and what my policy obligations are that I've been trained to, then I'm acting in the correct manner and it's not going to come back on me. Right. Great, that's what we want them to do.
That's right.
And so qualified immunity to me makes a ton of sense. It's actually what we want.
We have to have that. Again, who decides whether it was qualified or not, whether it met the qualifications or not?
Right, should be a judge.
That's where you have to have, judicious, reasonable, insightful, intelligent decisions that are being made.
Right.
Sometimes that's fictitious, but that's what we hope for. I mean,
you're always going to get individuals, and a judge is an individual like anybody else. I would say a judge is just an attorney who is employed by the state to be the referee, right? They're the umpire calling balls and strikes. But at some level you go, okay, wait a minute. If I do accept the role of judge, then I work for the people. And my interest is in ensuring justice is served, right? Okay, cool. Let's look at the rule book and let's look at the facts. And how does the rule book meet the facts? Here's my judgment.
And you got to hope for a dispassionate, honest judge with integrity that makes the right decision. And that sometimes is a hope. But the good news is it's not 1954 Mississippi anymore, right? I mean, our society has got a lot of warts, But we're evolving, and I think we're evolving in the right direction, and I think that things are a whole lot better now than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And people shouldn't lose sight of that.
And will we ever get it wrong? Yeah, I think we will occasionally get it wrong, but I think, we're coming of a time where we're not. And so, when you look at that officer and you go, was what he did a wrong decision? Yeah, it was a wrong decision. Mm-hmm. It was the wrong thing to do. Did he know that? Gosh, man, I think with everything evolving as fast as it didn't probably enter his mind. You could hear as soon as it happened, he went, "Oh no."
Yeah.
And he realized, "Oh no, what have I done? What happened here? That guy's dead." And he was. He's going to have to live with that. Should he face charges? No, I don't think he should.
Nope.
Should he face personal civil liability? No, I don't think so.
he should either.
I think that the people will. I think that the county, the state is going to. And so who's going to pay that? Us. We are. And if anything, to me, I look at it and I go, okay, so at the end of the day, when we're talking about these settlements, whoever approves that settlement, that's where we really need to do a lot of due diligence, because those folks aren't on the hook for that settlement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all right, whatever. It's somebody else's money, and I'm going to be out of office before we ever pay it anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah, accountability is what it's all about.
Yeah.
In the civil case.
And I say it again. Without qualified immunity, who would be a cop?
Nobody. Would you let your child become a police officer if they screwed up in the course of their job, they would be bankrupt for the rest of their life? Nobody would take that job.
Nobody.
And we've got to have cops, and we want good cops. We want to attract people that are good candidates, that are smart, not just people that can't get a job anywhere else.
And I think back, so I have a friend, Greg Ellifritz. He's a big deal in the training community. If you're not following him on active response training, you're wrong. Greg does great stuff, okay? He was a 25-year cop in a suburb of Columbus. And the kind of cop we want everybody to be, just really, really awesome cop. And he's been sued like 8 or 9 times in his law enforcement career. The last one, they had it on his dash cam of a woman just losing her mind at him over a traffic violation, and then sued him for excessive force for $150 million.
Wow.
And of course, in that case, the judge was like, dude, his qualified immunity holds. He was just pulling you over for traffic violation. Woman, go away. That woman, as a result of that, had a prohibition on filing lawsuits.
Vexatious litigant.
Vexatious litigant.
That's a tough one. I've got one of those cases going now, the first time in my career. So, yeah.
So a vexatious litigant.
Vexatious litigant. You gotta love saying it.
She has to get approval from the court to file a case against somebody else.
That makes me happy. There's people that abuse that right.
But imagine if he was worried about that.
Yeah.
About
how's he going to do his job?
Yeah, obviously it would just ruin him forever, and he'd never do his job. So qualified immunity, not as bad as you think it is.
Just make sure it's properly qualified.
Right. Tim, thanks, man.
As always, buddy. Thank you.